post-millennial, DC jail holding out on releasing J6ers after Trump issues pardons. Quote, of course, DC Gulag is holding out because it's what they do. Kelly told Bannon that in the wake of the pardons issued by Trump, J6ers are gradually being released from federal prisons across the country. Of course, DC Gulag is holding out because that's what they do, because this is a political gulag. So they're going to do whatever they can to extend the torment of Trump supporters in custody there. We've heard a bunch of stories of there were some individuals that were being processed for release, stopped, turned around, and brought back to their cells. And I'm curious if you understand why it's happening, or if anybody's familiar. What are the excuses they're giving, or should these people just be released?
It's the language. So the language says he needed pardons for everybody who's been, what did he say, charged or convicted?
Yep.
Convicted. But then after that, it was like the rest of them that hadn't gotten that far, it needed to be approved by the DOJ, and that wasn't going to happen till the next morning. So I don't know if this...
And some of them are on the probation, so...
Yes, so I don't know if this got corrected today, or if this is still accurate. It was the language. They were using semantics on the language in order to...
There's another individual who was, I believe was initially arrested over J6, but then they found a grenade or something to that effect. Are you familiar with this story?
Did they really, though?
Either way, because the charges are not specifically J6, there are some people who were clearly arrested over this who have not yet been released.
I think he said what?
Against the order.
Yeah.
I mean, those who are not released, because I had a meeting with the guys who just left this morning. They had the first breakfast, yeah. And they are on the probation. There are different conditions, but the stories are horrific. What they went through, physical state, mental state, some of them on the crutches, as you could see, yeah. So physically, they are devastated. And that was, I mean, I think someone should do documenting their stories and testimonies as soon as possible. Because for us, they are, J6ers, right? That's it, J6ers. But when you hear the personal story, what they went through all these years, all this time, I would call it torture. When, as a lawyer, from what I heard, they went through torture, which is against international law. Those responsible should pay consequences for what they have done.
What's some of the horrible, what was the most horrible?
I don't want to say that, but it was physically really bad. Really bad.
Outside of the more extreme stories, there are simple ones like people being put in extended solitary confinement and not given proper meals or exercise.
And that's by the international law, that's the part of the torture. Because everyone thinks that torture is when you lose your nails, thief, or whatever. No, when you are not getting food, water, when you are not taking care as the one who should, the way you should be by the law, that's the part of the torture. So you don't have to be in Guantanamo to go through torture. It's completely different by the international law. It's very serious.
I have a breaking news. U.S. trades Taliban prisoner for American detainees Ryan Corbett and William Wallace McKenty.
So Trump's just getting a lot done real fast, huh?
Yeah. You ask me what I think what it's going to happen, and I said he has to provide. He already he says day one, and he meant it. Like 200 orders, executive orders, day one. What he did now on day one is much more than Democrats did. Oh, sorry, it's not more. Wrong. Let me say again. They did so much damage, and he, in one day, made so much good that there's three things: gender equality, which means two genders, then pardoning people who went through torture, who only wanted to experience their own freedom. Now, illegal migrants, like starting with deportation. Thank God, that's the third thing. And what was the most important thing during this debate? What we had to discuss through all these months and years, I would say. Illegal migrants, J6ers, and energy, right? Yeah. What he did, one of the first executive orders was get rid of this Paris Agreement. Bravo, Mr. President. I'd love to do the same. If I would be president, I would do it the same day one.
I like the way that he was doing it too, because there's a video, and if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It was transparent. He sat down at his desk with a bunch of reporters, signing executive order, talking to the reporters as he's like chilling out. Like we missed this for 4 years. We didn't have a president that talked to people.
And he asked them how many press conferences Biden did like this, and they went 0. I love 0.
Rep Massie, I mean, you're more libertarian. How do you feel about these executive orders?
Well, I was in the rotunda. They had to move the inauguration inside, so I was in there and had a fairly good seat. And when you're sitting there, you have to decide where you're going to stand up and clap for. And I'm not one of these people that looks and sees as everybody else standing up. If he says something, reinstating the members of the military who were thrown out because of the vaccine mandate. That was a big one for me. Another one is stop fighting wars that aren't ours. Get back to focusing on America. And I think he's already starting to deliver on that in the Middle East with negotiating. He's got somebody over there who's negotiating the day before he was sworn in the release of some of the hostages in Gaza. But I think more importantly, an end to that war. And so I think that's the other promise. I remember a phone call I had with Trump when he was president, number 45. And we had this controversial vote on Iran. He wasn't really in agreement with the way I was going to vote. And I respect his opinion. And basically the issue was this: they had taken out Soleimani in Iraq, not in Iran. And the question was, could he strike mainland Iran? And the Democrats were not sincere in their effort, but they put a piece of legislation on the floor that says you can't go to war with Iran without a vote of Congress. Well, that's just patently obvious to me. But there were only 3 Republicans that voted for that. All the Democrats voted for it. They were just trying to embarrass Trump.
That's in the Constitution that you can't go to war without a vote from Congress.
So the president called me. He got caught wind that I was going to be voting for that resolution, and I thanked him. I tried to diffuse the situation a little bit. I just said, "Look, you're the first president since I've been old enough to vote who hasn't started a war, and I really appreciate that." And he was thankful that I acknowledged it, but I said, I just can't be with you on this vote today. I don't care if it's Obama who's president or you're president. It's Congress's role to declare war or not. And his argument to me was, if you give me more authority or don't tie my hands, I can basically carry a bigger stick and keep us out of war. And my argument back was, well, if we allow you to make a bigger, I wouldn't say bluff, because it could eventually turn into something. If we allow you to make a bigger threat, but we give up in that our ability to stop it, then if they call your threat, we're in full-blown war, and we've already given up our ability as Congress to say we can't be in that war. And so I ultimately I didn't have his favor that day, because I did vote unfortunately, I did vote for a resolution the Democrats put on the floor, but it was one that says you can't go to war without an act of Congress.
This is like since the Patriot Act, they've been like George Bush was declaring, hey, Afghanistan.
Since World War II, I believe, was the last time they declared war.
Yeah, Vietnam was just a peacekeeping action.
But under AUMF, it all got sketchy about how much power the president actually has to declare war, but there's been about 80 conflicts that have been war related that have not been voted on by Congress, because the last one was one of the battles of World War II.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up, what I want to do is give President Trump praise for putting this in his inauguration speech, to say we're not going to fight wars that aren't ours, and we're going to focus back on our own borders.
Well, so how do you feel? I mean, it's a lot of executive orders, though. Is there concern about?
About 200.
About 200?
About 200, right? Yeah.
But most of them are undoing things that Biden did, where Biden overstepped his authority.
One he did was he claimed that the cartels in Mexico are foreign terrorist organizations, which gives him the legal authority to declare drone bombs now in Mexico. And he wants to build up the troop presence on the southern border. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying he did that. And what do you guys think about that?
We had this discussion just before the show about the new way of gaining power through war, a new way of new weapons, basically. Because my PhD is on genocide, but especially on cultural genocide. So drugs, alcohol is used as a weapon against the nations. Like I know from Venezuela, in the past, they said, okay, we're not going to use tanks against US, we're going to use drugs. So what is happening is not only business, it's a political decision. Fentanyl is one of those recent decisions, political decision to pump it into America and kill society, weaken the society. And I don't believe I know it's not only business. This is the way to kill. That's why I think it's a part of culture genocide against American society. This is what they're trying to do in Europe. But Poland, for example, is the last stronghold of normality and awareness that this is not only business. So we fight very hard and we protect our borders the way nobody does, because our parliament passed the law that we can use live bullets, lethal weapon to kill if you are trying to cross the border and harm any of our soldiers. So if you want to come to Poland illegally, trying to harm any of our services, you will die.
I wonder, you will die. Real quick, the United States has been largely funding all these other countries, wars in other countries, and correct me if I'm wrong, has this been fact-checked yet that Trump paused foreign aid for 90 days?
For everyone but Israel.
Really?
Yes, that's what the community note said.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, either way, it's a start, I guess. Mm-hmm. But in terms of how much we've spent on Israel and Ukraine and Afghanistan, Iraq, etc.
Taiwan recently.
The only actual move that would ever make sense to an American is securing our southern border, dealing with the cartels that are trafficking fentanyl, drugs, children. When they come to us and say Ukraine and Russia, it's like, okay, I mean, this is 8,000 more, 12,000 miles away. How far away is it from here? What is the purpose of American resources going into these conflicts? Israel, for instance. And on the southern border, we have drugs, trafficking, murder, death. They say that, I forgot the name of the city, Juarez. Yeah. One of the most dangerous cities in the world. It's on our border and there's death and explosions and guns. I mean, we should stop that, right?
Why soldiers and border officers are given guns? What is the reason?
In the United States,
what is the purpose of having a gun?
Deterrence.
To use it. What is the problem? What is the problem for American Congress to pass the law that immediately when someone is trying to cross the wall is dead? What's the problem? Well, we passed this law. Do it. I mean,
so let's contrast the
with the experience of the gangs, because it's not about killing people, innocent people for no reason, like a dog, like ducks. It's not about that. We are human beings. We know that there are different situations, but the wave of illegals are used by the terrorists in Europe. They blow themselves in Paris, in Sweden, in Germany, not in Poland. Zero illegal migration equals zero terrorist attack. That's official data.
I want to ask the congressman your perspective as an American on how we would handle the southern border security issue.
Well, I mean, even if you didn't need guns or did need guns, Biden didn't care.
Yeah, true. It's not about you. It's about Democrats. What they did. They did nothing.
It's not that we can't stop them. I mean, he can build a wall and stop them. The Democrats opened the doors in the wall.
Yeah, and invited them.
Yeah, and invite them when they come in.
Invite them. Just
one other thing about being in the rotunda when Trump was delivering that speech. From where I was sitting, I could see George Bush, and I could see Bill Clinton, and I could see Joe Biden. Just a cabal of neocons who have started wars and got us involved in so many things overseas. And it looked like they were eating lemons, and Trump was having a ball with it, just feeding them lemons.
That was wonderful. I wanted to answer Ian's question that he asked earlier. So Donald Trump did use his emergency powers to... Donald Trump, is that good? Good? Yeah, all right. Donald Trump did use his emergency powers to declare an invasion. And that tends to still need Congress to issue some sort of joint resolution or kind of back him up. It needs congressional affirmation, I believe. He can't just do that, but he did that so that way he could enact the Alien Enemies Act that John Adams incited in 1798, and that would give him the power to order troops to restrain and just apprehend illegal people that are threatening America. And the last time this was used was World War II when they did it to the Japanese. So he's not planning to put them all in camps like FDR did. He's planning to send them back home.
Just a couple of clarifications. Donald Trump issued a lethal force authorization back in 2018, and it is the current policy of CBP that they do have the authorization for lethal force.
Thank God.
When presented with a threat or something of that nature.
So that wasn't overturned by Biden. Biden didn't overturn. I know he went in and overturned everything.
Well, so the issue was when we had this big border crisis with Texas and the federal government, I believe it was reaffirmed, or it was explicitly affirmed, the National Guard had the authority to use lethal force because there are cartel members with rifles.
That's right.
With ill intent trafficking children.
But you had 4 years of services being scared to use it. That is the problem. Because if this law is in power, why they are still coming? Why they are not afraid? When we passed the law recently, the numbers of illegal drop drastically like that.
The issue is largely that although Trump issued, I mean, I'll clarify.
So I think Democrats, they build the atmosphere for the illegals with these apps, websites, inviting them, and services did not what to do. Okay, we do have a right, but then on the political side, we have president and administration, which is inviting. That's how I understand this situation.
I'll break this down because it's worse than you than we are discussing. The first thing I'll say is the authorization, as we see it, it's supposed to be obvious. If our law enforcement, if our National Guard, if our soldiers, our federal agents are being threatened by obvious armed cartel members or otherwise, they have a right to use force to defend themselves and this country. What ends up happening under the Biden administration is this open door policy that they deny until it becomes so problematic they have no choice. Chicago is dealing with a mass migration problem. It's worse. We've discussed it on the show. Dr. Phil appearing on The View explaining it was so far gone as to how Biden, his administration, was allowing this, that there were CBP agents publicly stating that there were children being trafficked into prostitution under their watch and facilitated by CBP. Customs and Border Protection were bringing in children with numbers on their arms that they knew they were being sent into child prostitution, and they assisted in it as per the orders they were given by the federal government. What's changing now? It's really simple. We don't need to worry about lethal force. We don't need to worry. Donald Trump is shutting the border down for illegal immigration, and he's gonna build a wall. He's issuing the executive orders. So back to what you were saying, Ian. When I look at issues of Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, etc., you're gonna have to give me a really, really clever and likely circuitous argument about the interests of the American people and what these things do for us. The southern border makes sense when we know from Dr. Phil himself, children are being trafficked. Yeah, I believe. Did you want to add to that?
No, I'll wait for Ian.
I kind of joked at the Iowa caucus. We had Vivek Ramaswamy on about setting up machine gun nests all along the southern border. Like I'm kind of hardcore about this.
Yeah, everybody got freaked out by that.
And it was like, well, I put the seed in the ground, and I'm not. What concerns me is these cartels sit back in their headquarters, and they get citizens that don't know what's going on to run drugs in their underwear across the border, and then what do they open fire on?
No.
Okay,
so like, how do you discern a threat? When it's hidden,
when they're attacking us, when they're putting bombs in Juarez and things like that, we know, like when they are murdering people, it is reasonable to say we have to defend people from being murdered. That's self-defense.
So
okay, if I may,
500,000 children went missing.
That's right.
The HHS is in charge of placing the unaccompanied minors. So it might go to show that the U.S. government is the leading child trafficking organization in the United States.
I do want to jump to the next story, though, because
one sentence.
Yeah. Well,
what do you do? What do you do when someone is trying to break into your home, to your house? What
Depends
do you do?
on the state in this country.
Okay. Well, no. What I'm talking about logical thinking. Do you ask question or do you shoot and then ask questions? But I shoot and then I ask questions. What do you do if there is 3 people in the house? What do you do when it's 5 people in your house? What would you do if there is 330 million? America is your home. You have to protect it. Shoot and then ask questions.
Well, the issue here in the United States is that each different state has different laws. So for Poland,
no, I'm talking about the law in European Union. I'm not talking about someone being killed for nothing. I'm talking about the act of terrorism. I'm talking about those who are trying to commit crime. I'm not talking about shooting to anyone just to be, I'm talking about the terrorists, gangs, those who are trying to sell drugs and they're killing people. You have to protect yourself in general.
So obviously Trump is doing everything he can do by executive action and executive orders and policy changes. And a lot of that is rolling back to what he had when he was president the first time, which worked. But there's another prong here. As a member of U.S. Congress, I have to tell you, we are also going to pass laws. And there's a bill called reconciliation that allows you to do this with 51 votes in the Senate instead of the typical 60 votes. And so this will be one of the first bills that comes through Congress. There's going to be a tendency to add a lot of other stuff to it and not do things that need to be done in it. But I want to assure Ian, I have the same concerns. Like we don't have a king here. And, he doesn't get to make law, but he gets to enforce law, and there are some policies. But we are going to have bills to do basically a belt and suspenders here. So one of Trump's executive orders is to end birthright citizenship, for instance. We can do that in law as well. Now, there'll be arguments, constitutional arguments made to the Supreme Court, and a lot of this will get tied up, but it's a more solid footing when it's a law that's passed by Congress as opposed to an executive action or executive order. So that's going to come in the first 6 months of this Congress.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.